those of you who are familiar with the CIVIQ series, you're probably wondering, who is that lady up there and why doesn't Eric have the mic? And I am just proud and privileged to be partnering with Eric tonight. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Bridget Massengill, and I'm president and CEO of Thrive Regional Partnership. Our mission is across our 16-county tri-state footprint. That's why we have our 3 flags here with us tonight for our 3 states, to inspire responsible growth. And we do that through conversation, connection, and collaboration. And when we talk about what it means to have responsible, inspired growth, there's no better example than what we see here in the city that is hosting us this week in Chattanooga, and the work of the Chattanooga Design Studio. So why are we partnering now? So we are actually kicking off. We've had a full day of excursions, and this is our official kickoff of our flagship event, which is our Tri-State Summit. And truly, the Tri-State Summit brings our mission to life. All of those conversations that you've been hearing, all of that collaboration, conversation, connection, it brings it to life. And so I am just thrilled that we are able to kick it off with such a meaningful series. So I want to thank the Lyndhurst Foundation for sponsoring, being our presenting sponsor of the Tri-State Summit. And I'm going to definitely be thanking Eric in a minute, because Eric and I have known each other for a while. I was actually in downtown Chattanooga back when he was in downtown Chattanooga, and we didn't know each other, but we both had an affinity for what was happening, and you were a little bit more involved, a lot more involved. But following the work of the Chattanooga Design Studio and seeing what they have done to transform public spaces across this community, and now taking it to a series like this, where we can bring in people to come and speak about great practices that are underway, it's just huge. It's another one of those opportunities for us to really learn from each other. So I want to give him a special thank you for that. The Tri-State Summit theme, you'll see some of these logos in our name tag. The theme is yes and. And it is the idea that progress happens when considering how opposing priorities can present shared opportunities. Tonight's speaker that Eric's going to introduce, Richard Roark, is a perfect example of that spirit. In his talk, Nature Remixed, Reimagining Community and Biodiversity, he's going to really explore how we rethink the natural world around us to benefit both communities and ecosystems. That's at the core of what we aspire to do here in this region. So after the program, we're going to invite you to stay, mingle in the tap room. Great opportunity to continue those connections. And thank you all for being here. It's a pleasure to be here, and it is more a pleasure for me to now turn the mic over to the host, the co-host tonight, Eric Myers, Executive Director of the Chattanooga Design Studio. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bridget. What an honor it is to partner with Thrive Regional Partnership. Let's hear it for Thrive Regional Partnership and what they do. What an incredible organization. What an incredible leader. I want to thank everyone at Thrive Regional Partnership, everyone that's helped Jack Wood to set up this particular CIVIQ. We are really thankful to bring CIVIQ to you as an educational program of the Design Studio. If you don't know the Chattanooga Design Studio, we're a nonprofit urban design resource for the community. And we like to say that we focus on 2 primary areas of Chattanooga. We like to think that we provide inspiration for a high quality public realm, and we also focus on key urban neighborhoods in Chattanooga that intend to really improve the quality of life of everyone here in Chattanooga through collaboration and innovation and education such as tonight. So we're really pleased to bring Richard here to share with you tonight. We're really pleased to be partnered with Thrive Regional Partnership. I want to take a moment and share with you a brief personal story outside of my life at Chattanooga Design Studio. I'm honored to serve on the board of the Tennessee Aquarium. And I think this brief story will share with you how important this collaboration and what Chattanooga as a regional cultural hub in the aquarium is within our region. There is a small darter fish that has, through conservation efforts at the Tennessee Aquarium, has been preserved, has been maintained, saved from extinction. It's called the Laurel dace. And if you raise your hand if you've heard of this story. Yes, okay, good, very good. Laurel dace was actually discovered in 1975, so really not long ago. And that particular species is only home, its only home here is in the Tennessee Valley, really close to Spring City, very close to Spring City. And this past May, Spring City hosted the Laurel Dace Day and celebrated their connection to another species. And that's important for us to really understand our connection with nature and the other species that we share this planet with. And I think that that is exactly what Thrive is about. It's about what Chattanooga can be as a cultural example to this entire region. And it's what our community, our entire region is about, how we celebrate what we share together. And I look forward to hearing more about that work across the country from Richard. And so it is my honor tonight to share with you Richard, a little bit about Richard and introduce him. I have a few notes, and so forgive me to make sure I share a little bit about his work. His work spans scales and varieties, as you can imagine. You can see Olin's work online. I mean, you'll see scales from coastal work to inner city work to very urban work. Some of the work that stands out to me that I'd like to share with you is Hunts Point, which is a competition entry that was an award-winning competition entry in New York, and that particular project had 4 lifelines, if you will, for how to preserve the coastal eastern coast of the U.S. And those lifelines are critical to resilience, and they are intended to be a model for eastern coastal regions. Dilworth Park in Philadelphia. Raise your hand if you've been to Dilworth Park. Yeah, a few folks have. It's an amazing place, and it's directly adjacent to Philadelphia City Hall. It's hard to imagine such a vibrant public space, usually next to our government buildings. We like to have those ornamental spaces that nobody can go into, kind of like the living room with all the plastic furniture. But no, this space is activated. It's filled, and I was talking with Richard about it tonight. And what did you say? It was kind of like doing open heart surgery on your grandmother. So apparently it was a very difficult project to pull off as a designer. So it gives you a little insight to his work and how diverse and how challenging it is. And I think in that way, I'm honored to have him here to share with us a lot. Another interesting fact, if you've been to CIVIQ before, raise your hand. And so Richard serves on the board of Studio Ludo. Does anybody here know Studio Ludo? And yes, I would imagine that some of you might. We actually had Megan Talarowski at CIVIQ in February, and Megan's work at Studio Ludo is incredible. So there's cross-pollination in this small world of designers that we all know. And so I want to share with you a little bit about Richard's background and then turn it over to him. Richard has a bachelor's of environmental design from Auburn University, and then a master's in landscape architecture from Auburn University as well. And in 2001, he received his master's in community planning, and that was about the time that he joined Olin Studios. So he's been with Olin for over 2 decades now, and his work spans over that time a diverse background of landscapes and thought-provoking landscapes across the nation. And so, please, this is Richard's first time to Chattanooga. So please join me in welcoming him here and to CIVIQ. Thank you.
Thank you. So I feel a little bit awkward about it because I grew up in Mobile. Maybe a few of you have been to Mobile. Yeah. Okay. I grew up there, and I've been to Nashville. I've been to Memphis, and I've missed out on all the good Appalachia, and that's a shame because my parents are from North Carolina, so it's like I should know better. but I'm here to make it up now. I also, before coming up here to do the presentation, I was talking to one of the landscape architects from here who worked on Coolidge Park, and we were both talking about business development, and he's like, I don't like it. And I was like, yeah, I don't like it either. I'm an introvert. And then I thought, I was like, oh man, Thrive and CIVIQ are going to be like, this guy doesn't like to talk. But I like to talk a little bit, and what I like to talk about are, I think, things that matter to community, things that matter to nature, and I like to understand and find how places tick, and it's such an honor to be a landscape architect and a planner where, we can really look at the whole landscape around us. Some of you may come up to me and, say, hey, I've got this site or something's going down in my yard and I want to talk to you about it. And I want to talk to you about it too. But everything that you see around you, when you look out, the roads, the buildings, the hills, Lookout Mountain, like all that stuff, the Tennessee River, that is the landscape. And constantly asking, how can it be something that adds up for us and for nature? And a little bit about that, I guess, is understanding the nature we have and the possibilities of the nature we have. We spend a lot of time looking back and like, it used to be this way. And we can't necessarily get it back that way, but we can come up with something forward. So that's kind of what this presentation is about. Hence the upside down deer and the wolf. Maybe it's a coyote. It's probably a coyote, to be honest. Now I just have to learn how to use the clicker. Okay. So I like to draw to come up, think through ideas, and I thought there's 3 ways of coming at nature that are kind of preconceptions. There are ideas that are well-intentioned, but sometimes they go wrong. So there's the domination of nature, which I call the bear rug. We're just gonna take the resources of it, and we're just gonna use it for our benefit. Then there is the fear of nature, like nature invading us. That could be coyotes, that could be cockroaches. And I call that the bear break-in. We're worried about nature disturbing our lives. That could be the white-tailed deer that drive you nuts. And then there's the bear hug. When we think that if we just love nature, nature will love us back. And we just have to understand nature's terms, I think. Sometimes some nature will love us back, and some nature would like to eat us, and that's okay. So I was thinking about how do we come up with a better mix, and this is one of our projects that we did called Grace Farms, and we worked with Sana architects, these great Japanese architects. But what I love about this photo is it's kind of this hope in it of finding the right mix between the meadows. This was an already kind of built landscape. It was pasture. It was a horse farm for many years, and had a new vision of what it could be, not just leaving something behind and moving on to some other thing. So there's poetry that we aspire to in design. I think all the architects do this very well, and landscape architects do this not so well, as programming, which is basically saying if you have a space, it should have a purpose, or maybe it should have about 10 different purposes. So what I keep advocating for is that when people look at a landscape and say, it's the thing outside the building. It's like, look, it could be the thing that's supporting habitat. It could be the thing that's working to process stormwater and cleanse things. It could be a nature play environment. all these different things, but I keep trying to think about, like, how do we start seeing our landscapes as having program, purpose, and value for people. And so sometimes it's good to get people to design it with you. You know, it's to demystify design is just about time, effort, energy, and commitment, and being honest with something. And I think this is actually from Hunt's Point. And so we created this big section of what it would be like to create flood protection for the Food Distribution Center of New York, which feeds 23 million people in the tri-state area. It's all in the floodplain. Basically, instead of just having something that would just be this big kind of armored thing, we invited community members to do paste-ups of, well, it would be great if this side was a park. It would be great if we could begin to restore ecology to the East River, all these kind of things that build things up. But we have to understand, when we mix with nature, what kind of ecology and what kind of systems we're going to get. And we just have this long history. This is Edward Hicks' painting. It's called The Peaceable Kingdom. He did about 60 of these paintings, so slight variations, but they're really amazing. It's the lion that laid down with the lamb theme, and it goes back to this, like, can't we figure out how to get nature together? And at the same time, he was dealing with some complicated issues. He was a Quaker in Pennsylvania. He was thinking about how indigenous communities would work with the European settling community. And there were just a lot of, questions about, is this all really going to work out? Because I have to imagine this cow had to be saying to himself, how long are we going to be posing here, and when can I leave? So now we're going to have a soils and ecology seminar. That's exciting. Yes. So soils form, through a lot of biochemical processes. They form through rock exposed to air, and basically there's a lot of limestone here, so you know that there's a lot of chemistry that happens, especially when the water is acidic, which is, this is in kind of an acid landscape in a good way. And then, of course, things die. You have insects in the soil. They turn it up. And it's a whole process to get to that kind of brown soil that's rich, thick, humusy. In fact, the word humus comes from humans. So then I start thinking about bodies and zombies. But basically, this is the best stuff in terms of organic. And depending on the soil, and there's all sorts of different soil types I could talk about, soils are kind of like, if you imagine a petri dish to grow bacteria or some sort of science experiment on, soil is the opportunity connected to the vegetation that you're going to get. And so the kind of soil you have says the kind of vegetation you'll get. And the kind of vegetation you'll get kind of says the kind of insect that you're going to get. And any strict ecologists here are going, this is way too simple. And you're right, and I'm sorry. You can beat me up later. And then, between the insects and the vegetation, you get the birds. And then you get some of the larger megafauna. Maybe this is a returning mountain lion. But anyway, this is what kind of starts to put a template together for ecologies in space. So this right here, this is a soils map. And it's this incredible mosaic of colors that talk about different types of soils. You have sandy soils, you have clay soils, and I won't belabor it. But imagine if we looked at just 300 acres. And you can see this is, no, this laser is not going to work. But you see there's a hilly part, and that blue stuff is a wet part, and it's kind of hilly. The top part, like if you're heading out toward Lookout Mountain, you might see, certain kind of dry site trees like hickories, and the soils are fairly thin. And then if you're on the steep side, you might get another kind of forest community growing there, which has its own set of trees. And then as you start to get into the valleys, the soils start to become thicker because that's where everything starts silting and piling up. And it's also moister, so you get a different kind of plants because it's about the soils and it's about the moisture. And then finally, you're kind of in swamp and bottomlands, and that, as you know, is the most kind of important in terms of biodiversity and carbon sequestration. But what if you put roads and pavement over all of it, you bifurcate it with all these slices? What is the ecology then? You no longer have the same chemistry of soil. Concrete is alkaline, it's not acidic. Your asphalt and concrete absorb heat and radiate it out. Water doesn't permeate them as much, and it doesn't hold in the soil as much, and it moves through the landscape faster. So you have different chemistry, you have different moisture. The species can't cross all the different sections as well as they used to. Maybe the birds are okay. But things are fundamentally different. But, we say, okay, we're going to plant a native garden and it's going to be great, or we're going to do habitat restoration and it's going to be great because we fixed one of those little grids there. And I was like, it was a whole network. It was a whole system. Some things will do fine, some things will come back, but we need to realize that it's kind of like coming back to your house after 20 years and your house isn't there, it's just the lot that was there. And you're like, that's not exactly what my home was. And that is kind of what we need to start to think, is like coming to this understanding. It's like, okay, things are different now, and we can move beyond it. But this is in my neighborhood. I have my asphalt, my concrete. I have soils that have been turned up in all sorts of different directions. I have pipes running through it that create different temperatures and conditions in it. So it's changed. The other thing is that humans are like, we're like the buffalo that didn't go anywhere. Per square foot, we are as much as any of the heaviest megafauna, and we don't go anywhere, so the soils don't recover the same. So again, I spend a lot of time saying, all right, well, knowing what I know now, how can I design soil so that it will work in the urban environment, so it can continue to support tree roots, so that it won't compact? And how can I find kind of like cohabitat conditions with species that can live with the human dynamic? Those all have become like formative factors for me when I'm asking about design and place and kind of understanding these things. And I'm so thankful all of you are in the room patient to hear this, especially after you kayaked on a river and you saw vehicles with their own minds. Here we're talking about dirt. You're like, surely this gets better. The other thing about plants is that they don't tend to, most species, you can point out a few that dig deep into the earth, but most species their roots are right at the top, just like this guy. They want to spread laterally. So you got to be kind to plants when you think about where we're walking and everywhere, and that a 4 foot by 4 foot planter is not necessarily a good thing. So I've talked about these systems, these kind of relationships. The mountain lion eats the rattlesnake eats the bird's eggs. The bird eats the bee, and the bee pollinates the flowers. So now that we know these relationships and we know that some of it is broken, I thought as a landscape architect, I am a good person because I believe in ecology, I believe in nature, I believe in community. And then I came across these statistics from the International Panel on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. And I was like, well, climate change is causing all the problems, right? It's only causing 14% of the biodiversity loss. 30% of the biodiversity loss is land development. I'm in the land development business. I'm like, ugh. And then 23% is what we eat. And sadly, I'm a meat eater, but meat is a bit of a problem. And overfishing in the seas. Farm-raised catfish, though, that's pretty up there in ecological. Chemicals, that's about 13%, and then invasive species, about 9%. And I'm bringing all this up because we're so often told, this is the problem, do something about it. You know, for example, you think about your lawn. You don't want to waste water, but you like your lawn. I don't want to waste water either, and maybe you don't need your lawn. But public water consumption of freshwater resources, of groundwater resources, domestically, the domestic use of water, that's 14% of water use. Actually, it's even less than 14%. 14% is only what cities and municipalities use in terms of collecting water. The rest is agriculture. So we can do a little bit with our problem, but we have to understand the rural, we have to understand the urban to really understand resource management. And we just can't keep this Jenga of letting, our biodiversity framework fall away. So I am so glad for Thrive and for CIVIQ to have this kind of like, how do we all get through this together? I'm going to talk about a planning process for the city of Los Angeles. For the county of Los Angeles. It really began with me trying to figure out, everybody wants the LA River to be natural and to support biodiversity, or some very vocal voices do. And I'm like, I want to do that too. And so I started looking at the southern steelhead salmon, which was a keystone species to the LA River. And the last one that was seen was in 1940. I started with the soils map because you can see that's a thing with me. This is LA County's soils. This is from the turn of the century, about 1916 or so. And I went and looked at, what were the soils along the LA River? What was that ecology? A lot of it was called Tunga Wash Sands. It was a gravelly, sandy soil. And the LA River was kind of flat, shallow, and meandering, which sounds like some sort of LA Hollywood critique. The southern steelhead salmon, it has kind of like two lives. It is born upstream in these kind of like little gravelly pools, and then it makes its way down to an estuary, to a bay, and then it lives its best life in the ocean, and then it's like, I'm gonna have kids, it's time to start a family, and it goes back up the river. Goes back up to the river, great times are had, one last time, eggs are laid, and it's curtains. So that's what was there. That's kind of the ideogram of what the LA River was and how it worked. This is some very early photo that I found that kind of really shows that dynamic. You see how gravelly it is, and it's wide and shallow. There were a number of big floods, and everybody was kind of living near the river, and there was some profound property damage that occurred. And so the Army Corps of Engineers came in 1938 to deal with this issue. And so we got this. And not desirable. Unlike your Tennessee River, you might be asking yourself, it's like, why the Army Corps of Engineers? The LA River was never navigable. You could never sail. Kayaks is it. But basically, it was part of their mission to address these floods. And so they did, and they did a fairly good job of that for most of the river stretches. But we lost all that ecology, and it became a very, very polluted industrial corridor. But this is a map of what it was when the river could move around as much as it pleased. It actually even went to Santa Monica once, which is there. The LA River comes out here. For a while it did that just for fun. So we started trying to figure out, it's like, rip out the concrete. And so we tried different ways. If we rip out the concrete, we basically and just put lawn down. Not that you would do something foolish like that, but it would reduce the flood control capacity to 55%, so almost half of what it was. Because how the water works coming through there is a coefficient of friction. If there's fuzzy stuff, water hits the fuzzy stuff and it slows it down. If it's very slick and smooth, water shoots through it. And so they do these flood calculations based on how long and how fast they can get water to come out of a place. So we tried all these different scenarios, and like the best we had was this like little sad little green strip, that was like, okay, well, this preserves 95% of the flood control capacity. But we were like, this is not going to work. So then we said, okay, well, we'll make it wide and shallow again. We can't let it go everywhere at once, but we'll make it wider. So we said, okay, we need to make it basically about 5 times as wide. What would it take to do that? We need to remove 50 miles of freeway, 30 miles of railroad, 75 miles of transmission lines, 93 bridges, and 385 hospitals, police stations, fire stations. Yeah. Come on. What did I do? I'm sorry. Whew, we went to the end? That's hilarious. What do we do now? They don't want to listen to me talk for this long. You're going to see it back. Close your eyes. Giving everything away. Closer, 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 closer. You're like, oh, this goes on forever. I'm so tired. Oh, kitties, animals. When does this end? Okay. All right, there we are. All right, never again. This is the bad button they told me about. So another thing I learned was that LA County pays $26 billion a year in managing chronic health diseases from people who can't afford the cost of health care at a certain point. They may be able to afford some of it, they may be able to afford none of it, but overall, there's about $26 billion in health care costs that range from asthma, childhood obesity, COPD, diabetes. All this is major chronic health care problems. And I was interested in this because we were finding that the landscape can be healing. It can make you healthier. It can also make you sicker. And so after thinking about these fish and thinking about the fact that 1 million people live within a mile of this river, and 25% of Californians are within an hour drive of this river. What do they need too? What does the ecology need? But don't they deserve something too? One of the things that we found was that in that red zone is where you have the highest pollution and the most severe economic burden. So you'll notice that the river, the blue line, runs all the way through it. And this was just saying, this was a map that said, if there is, we think these are the most vulnerable populations, and there will be bad outcomes, or there'll be worse outcomes. If you're living here, it's an indicator that there's going to be those healthcare costs, those problems. And when COVID was happening, unfortunately, we could see that a map that speculated based on these criteria was actually pretty accurate. That's just crazy. So if we could address pollution burdens, if we could address access to open space, maybe we could begin to address health outcomes. And it led to a question, $26.4 billion. Do we want to spend those billions of dollars managing misery and chronic diseases for life? Or do we want to create great parks and open space that will cleanse the air, cleanse the water, and help people have a less sedentary lifestyle and be connected to their neighborhoods? Where do we want to put our money? The other thing that was going on and still going on was homelessness, and we studied all the factors of homelessness, from why do people lose the resources to housing, what happens to them personally, what are personal causes from it, what are external causes from it. And there are many causes, but one thing that was very, very interesting I found was like, I could track the cost of housing and I could track homelessness, and it was like they're in parallel. As the cost of housing goes up, there's more homeless people. And I was like, well, that's interesting. So we came up with 9 goals. Support healthy ecosystems, reduce the flood risk because you have to keep things from flooding, to really connect to everybody across all these neighborhoods and communities that are here, and to manage water responsibly, and as a resource. So these were the 9 goals that we developed. And we created this data-driven set that was really looking at everything from soils to these healthcare incidents to parks needs assessments, really trying to build and weight these factors. And then I had to bring this back again. So this mountain lion is dependent upon those mule deer. Those mule deer need 3,600 acres, basically of browsing, to support a stable population. And that guy needs 150 square miles. I don't know why I had 2 pictures of deer, but I do like deer. So this is how we got into this big argument with a lot of environmental advocates, and they were like, you have to make all of the LA River natural and ecological. And I was like, I can't do it. I tried. Start with your existing intact ecosystems and grow from there. That's basically one of the lessons that we learned. You don't kind of like build your ecology where there's none around. You kind of start by protecting those systems and growing them outward from there, because they need to travel together, they need to be connected. It's a whole system. We also did people said, okay, well, even if you have all the money and you made everything like a wonderful park, you're going to make housing go up. And housing will create more homelessness. So we did a gentrification map of all of LA County. And we basically looked at factors in terms of are the rental prices moving? Are there certain kind of vulnerability indicators with population? Just looking at this kind of constellation of data about what is driving the cost of living, and are there pressures on it, low, high, or medium? And so that's what we did. And we said, okay, well, anywhere that we do a project along the LA River, if it's in a sensitive zone where it's experiencing gentrification, then we're going to need offsets. It can't just be a park. It has to also have housing or rent stabilization. So began to say there are connective effects between these. And so we built out the plan in terms of thinking about habitats for people and habitats for ecology, the park needs. I'm going to go through this fast. This was a really cool tool because sometimes looking at things spatially is actually too much and you can't concentrate down to things. We created this thing called the river ruler, and it goes along the 51 miles of the river, and it basically takes each river mile and says, well, how can we look at things critically in different ways? And there were also 16 municipalities that we were working with. It wasn't just the city of LA. It wasn't just Long Beach. It was Vernon. It was a whole host of cities, Burbank, Glendale, so on and so forth. And so every stretch of the river, we created maps about habitat, about flood, about gentrification risk, and so that we could look in every piece around it, we could start to build that thing that I've always dreamed about, a program for landscape. It was based on a lot of community engagement, and it was based off of data, trying to understand site-specific needs. Because I was like, how are we going to work on a 2,300 acre, watershed, 51 miles? How are we going to get to the specifics of it? And so this is where data could actually help us tell stories and think through things. And so for each river mile, we have a program. Some are about flood and ecology. Some are about education. Some are about community parks. Some are about the arts. But it all came from that kind of careful analysis. And we developed a kit of tactics. We couldn't design every single piece of the river, and it wouldn't be the right thing to do it. Because the act of design, especially on a big project, requires input from lots of people, and you want that to be a detailed and a rich process, just like kind of starting at Hunts Point. But we did explain what are the kind of big things in terms of what you would need to make it a park space and to recognize how the river works. And our most controversial thing was the idea of putting the ecology on top of the river and connecting neighborhoods with it, because people were like, you're giving up on the river. And I was like, the river was never 60 feet down. The river was high and wide and shallow. We have to make the ecology for our times. We have to get in front of it and say, this is what we have, and make something wonderful. So that's kind of what we did in this example. We're not introducing necessarily mountain lions to all the parks, but in the Santa Monica Mountains, you will find them there. But we do see these potential as creating something verdant, rich, and something that Southeast LA really needs. And a whole kit of parts for, how do you make this work across that 51 miles to be comfortable and connected and friendly and bikeable. And this is a snapshot of that kind of larger park, which we call at the confluence. It's where the Rio Hondo River meets the LA River. And this is what it was like. And you could see this is all farmland. Did you know that Los Angeles County was the most productive farmland from the 1920s to the 1950s? The most productive in the country. Nobody goes and says, farming in Los Angeles, but it was true. Watts was incredible for potato farming. So we, now today, it's that V shape that is formed there with a bridge and railroad crossing. We developed these programs, health and wellness, and trying to connect neighborhoods that had lived separate from one another, and also really trying to give, especially kids here, places to play. So this is what it is now, and this is what we envision it to be. Really creating a connection across neighborhoods and less of a divide. This is what we would envision it looking like in terms of a landscape that you would move through and really would have connection to ecology and ecosystems. Place that could gather water in meaningful ways and be a steward to the environment. And you can check it all out. All this is available online. You can visit it. You can see what we did. Some things, I think what's been great is we put all our data out there. We put all our methodology for how we calculated it, so that everybody in LA County is now using it. It's just the standard of data now. Everybody has this program. It's just how they're using it. And I think that common table setting, they didn't have that before. People ask, like, well, what about the mega projects? Is that what it's about? And I was like, one of the best things that we did was just having this common table that all my colleagues can be a part of and stand up on top of and use, and really figure out the tapestry that the LA River should be. Oh, mother. Oh. We did it again. There needs to be a co-pilot for this. Okay. This is the worst way to do things. Maybe you like seeing some of the images more than once. Okay. Even faster. They're tired, they want beer. Two hurricanes in 2024 were really awful. Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton. They struck a botanical garden I've been working at since 2017, Maurice Selby Botanic Gardens. The facility that they have there, they're the largest collection of epiphytes in North America and the best documented collection of epiphytes in the world. And they're on a little 15-acre site in the middle of Sarasota, Florida. And this is their facilities. Like this thing that looks like a transmission Angel Laura is working with, that's the RO water filter that he services. And this is Bruce. He's like the Indiana Jones of epiphytes, he was in these very cramped closets. And this lower central photo was just this was Palm Avenue, and it was kind of like parking lot on one side, and then you go through and you visit the gardens on the other side. But this was really more than half the property. So when we got there, the plan was to look at it and say, well, how could they think about resilience? They're right on the bay. How could they deal with their issues of growth? And how could they replace existing buildings over time? They needed a master plan. A lot of their buildings were being held together by termites. So we developed this idea of gradually stepping back from the bay and moving new conservatories that would be above the 100-year floodplain and away from the VE zone, and to build new administration buildings so that they could really grow the gardens. This is my partner with the baby, Marnie Burns, who worked with me on this project, pointing something out on the model that we did, and Sahar Costin, one of the best photographers you can get. She's freelancer, you should work with her. But we looked at all these permutations about how to understand nature in relationship to this part of Central Florida, and how to speak to this global mission of epiphytes, which are kind of the canaries in the coal mine of so many garden spaces. And so we built phase 1, which created a new plant research building, so Bruce is very happy now. And we created a new welcome center. We created this building called the Leaf Building, which basically gathered up all the cars that were in the parking lots, put them in a parking structure, put 50,000 square feet of solar panels on it, and then put a restaurant in front of it called the Green Orchid. And it's amazing. And it got hit by 2 hurricanes as soon as we built it. And it still looks good. I just started work in Asheville, and seeing what Helene has done. We need a plan because hurricanes can get you anywhere. But this is the gardens, and this is the landscape that we did. The architects were amazing, Overland Partners. They did this really beautiful architecture. We were the landscape architects. We were the planners. They made this kind of biophilic structure resembling tillandsias. And then you have all these hanging orchids at the Welcome Center. This beautiful muley grass. My favorite grass is Gulf Coast muley. I wonder why. And then this beautiful ensemble here that we have these different bodies of water that represent different bodies of water in Florida. From the internal hummocks to the bay. And so this is how that turned out. Now we're working on phase 2, which is moving the conservatories. And I'm like, time is of the essence, because we have to temporarily move all the entire living collection to a secret offsite location that I'm not going to tell you about. And then we have to hope that we get through about 2 hurricane seasons to get this project built. And we're the prime. We have an architect working under us, Sweet Sparkman, that is incredible. A modernist School of Sarasota architect, and we are building a building that is basically our goal is to make it a whole renewable energy campus. So we're having like the lightest energy footprint possible. As the prime, I was like, oh, well, I'm going to do sustainable sites. I'm in control. I have the contract. I can do what I want. But then I realized, but if I want to be good, I need to focus on energy, because that is kind of the greatest thing that this conservatory consumes. And then the next thing is water resources. So that's what we decided to focus on. So we're a lead project, and it was very weird. And I call this my largest interior design project of all time. Working through the resilience, we said, how you figure this out is you ask yourself, what's at risk and what's at stake? Then you ask yourself, how do we minimize our risks? And then you say, okay, some risks you just can't avoid. How do we recover from them? And that is basically resilience in a nutshell. Any other presentation is just complicated. Risk equals threat times vulnerability. Threat is the kind of thing coming at you. Vulnerability is basically the chances of that thing coming at you and hurting you. And in our case, it was overland flooding. It wasn't hurricane force winds. It's actually the flooding that gets you. And so what's the vulnerability? Losing the collection, losing the mechanical systems, and structural damage. We mapped all the hurricanes that have come to the city of Sarasota. They've only gotten category 1 through category 3, so it's important to think about that. And yes, we did think about climate intensification. This is a photo of after Hurricane Milton. This is a boat that washed up on their property shore that caused, I think they had like 3 boats just plow into the gardens. So the new facility is the pink guy, and it is raised above. The orange is the 500-year floodplain, and so we have it above the 500-year floodplain elevation, and we have a 14-foot. We have a 4-foot wall all around the skirts of the building, so that even if something was taller than a wave event, or a flood event was greater than the elevation of the orange zone, even then we have flood protection. And then we raised all our mechanical equipment. Interesting thing, again, back to the rural, there's less code enforcement or even code that applies in agricultural areas. Consequently, greenhouses aren't designed for hurricanes. There are no there are no companies that are designing hurricane-resistant structures that meet Florida building code. So we're shooting 2x4s at our greenhouse, thanks to working with a North Carolina company that's near Asheville called the Van Wingert Company, and they have been very good sports about all of this. But we're also raising the mechanical systems. We have generators, and our learning pavilion, we've also designed that so that it could actually be flooded, and we designed the conservatory so that water would always kind of move around it. This is some sketches about how we thought about the flow. We wanted the flow to be kind of equal opportunity in terms of moving through the different environments of the greenhouse and then back into the landscape. This is a sketch I did opening up a view to the bay and creating this kind of big fun rock outcrop made out of cap rock, and then that's the learning pavilion to the side peeking through. This is some amazing renderings that were done by a Ukrainian connection that I made as we actually connected with Ukrainian landscape architects that are looking for work during this terrible period. And so this has been kind of a collaboration with them doing the renderings. So we work back and forth with them, and they make, they're called L Design, and they're wonderful. And so this is looking down Palm Avenue, where it's become a space now at the conservatory. This is called the cenote, which is this idea of there's these landscapes that are formed, as water keeps hitting limestone that carves out caves. They're incredible environments for a number of orchid and epiphyte types. This is the montane space, so this is cloud forest, which doing a cloud forest, which is a very cool, humid environment in South Central Florida, is very difficult on the air conditioning and on the energy. This is their kind of their conservation section of the facility. This is the main gallery, tropical, the other one. And then this is the learning pavilion looking back out to the bay. I like to draw cartoons. I keep auditioning for the New Yorker and not getting it, but this is my version of a New Yorker cartoon, and it says, I picked the middle one. Thinking about, where are we going with climate? Where are we going with how it goes? I don't exactly know, but we should prepare for things that make sense. So it's a little late, so to just wrap this up, because I messed up on the slide controls, I want to talk about a place in upstate New York. It's kind of like on this rural city, divide. This is a Sojourner Truth State Park. It was a quarry land. It was clay land. They used a whole bunch of clay to build New York City buildings. It's 500 acres. And it was an industrial working community up until the late 70s. And then that economy kind of just picked up and went and just left them where they were. And so this is looking at how this landscape could come back from an industrial quarry site and become actually a great nature park. So this is kind of all that history that was there in terms of brickyards and ice houses and quarries. We developed this program, nurture the rewilding of the site, give the park a mission for climate adaptation, provide options versus fixed outcomes, make it inclusive and support the local. So we developed a framework that kind of recognized the ecology that we have, the soils that were there. There's no soils here. This is a quarry. It's rock. So you're looking at the species that will do well in gravel barrens, which is actually great bird habitat, which is vitally needed. So we looked at that in terms of region, site, and developed a program. We developed a strategy for growing forest where we could. And we played around with these old buildings and kind of saw this kind of amazing graffiti, and we're like, we don't want to touch that, we want to celebrate that, and came up with ideas for it. And then lastly, to bring people back to the Hudson River, which had been polluted for many years with PCBs. And so this is kind of the first park pavilion here, and this is what we envisioned, and this is what we got built, which uses this kind of old industrial barge dock as a new landing for the community. And all that land that is meadow right there, that was all gravel and dust, and it was just shunting off into the Hudson River. And it was polluting it, and now it's stable, it's living, and it's, again, good bird habitat. And this is kind of it built, people enjoying it. And I like this phrase from, T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, shall we not put our lands back together? And that's what I loved about Sojourner Truth State Park, is just taking these abandoned places and finding new futures for them. I'm doing the same thing with glass and with biochar, taking waste glass and turning it into soils, and these are plants that I've grown with it, and using it for a stormwater garden that's here along the Schuylkill, and that's how that grew and came up. And I guess just to finish is places should be cooler in every sense. We need a design approach to urban ecology, but we don't have a restoration template. We need to live with the ground we've already trampled and leave the rest to nature. Thank you.